Hari Hari. So we're on text number 23 of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. We touched briefly on text 23 in Gita Satsang 14, I believe. But I want to dedicate a little more time to this particular verse, 23, and I'm therefore giving it its own presentation. Arjuna says to Krishna, "Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra." So Arjuna wants to see who's come to fight. The problem is that the fight is not on the battle of Kurukshetra. The fight is within Arjuna's own mind. The fight, the battle he is undergoing or must undertake is against material conditioning, against attachment. That is the battle Arjuna has to fight. The Kauravas are irrelevant. I take that back. Not irrelevant. Of course, irrelevant. They're standing before him. But they are secondary to this equation. The most important issue is that Arjuna first win the battle of his mind. That's the Bhagavad Gita. Before Arjuna could shoot one arrow, he has to obtain complete and absolute clarity, spiritual clarity, or rather, clarity that will only come through spiritual maturity. Absolutely essential before he even begins to go to war. One of my favorite sayings is by Martin Luther King Jr. Not so much because of who he is and what he did, certainly, but because of the recognition of what he was going through and what he had to do in order to achieve victory. Obviously, he is the great civil rights leader. And he was scheduled to go to an event. And his assistants and secretaries were trying to rush him to try to make sure he's on time, not miss the event, whatever the case may be. And one of his secretaries went up to his room, knocked on the door. Dr. King is becoming late. We're going to be stuck in traffic, or we're going to be, whatever the case may be. Apparently, Dr. King turned and said, "So much, you're correct, so much that I have to do today, so much important work that I have to do today, that I must spend another hour on my knees." Beautiful, beautiful quote. General Patton was once involved, I believe it was when General Patton was an Olympian. Not too many people know that. But I believe it was either before the Olympic Games or some athletic event. General Patton was very athletic in his younger days. He was always fit, as an Army general should be. And right before a very important competition, he knelt down in prayer. And his wife could see from the distance. After the match, I don't remember whether he had won or not. That's secondary and irrelevant. Or at some point, his wife asked him, says, "George, I saw you praying before the match. Were you praying to win?" And George Patton, who was famous for his salty language, uttered a curse saying, essentially, "No, I prayed to do my best." Arjuna had to be right in his mind. He needed to have clarity before beginning such an undertaking. Oftentimes in our own lives, we are stressed, we have decisions to make, important, significant, life-altering decisions for ourselves, maybe for our family members, relationships, others around us. And these decisions, whether large or small, require that we be in a spiritual state of mind. Let me restate that. It behooves us that before making decisions, particularly major decisions, but any decisions, it is incumbent upon us to stop and make sure we are connected with the Supreme before making decisions. To reconnect with Krishna before making decisions. Make sure that we are grounded firmly in our spiritual nature, in our spiritual selves before making decisions. Making sure that attachment is not part of the decision. This, of course, takes practice. This, of course, takes intentional endeavor. But the more we do it, the more natural and easier it becomes. Because remember, as Chardin would say, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So it will come naturally. The only issue is that we have not done so. We have not engaged in this type of decision making our entire life. We were not taught to spend another hour on our knees before making decisions. We were not taught to pray to do our best. We were taught to pray for a very specific and particular outcome. That is what leads to ultimate defeat. Praying for a particular and specific outcome is an attachment that will lead to our ultimate defeat. So Arjuna's first battle is not with Duryodhana. The very first arrow that must be shot is to Arjuna's own mind. Udharer atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayat atmaiva hyatmano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmana. Krishna describes, this is in the later chapters of the Gita, 6th chapter. Krishna says, one must deliver him or herself with the help of the mind and not degrade themselves. For the mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. The mind can be either or. The Amrita Bindu Upanishad further explains this in a very, very beautiful shloka. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo bandhaya vishaya sango muktyai nirvishayam mana. Beautiful shloka in this Upanishad, Amrita Bindu. And it clarifies, or it provides greater understanding for what Krishna has said about the mind being both friend and enemy. The Amrita Bindu Upanishad says, for man or woman, for humankind, mind is the cause of bondage and mind is the cause of liberation. Mana eva manushanam karanam bandha mokshaya. Mind is the cause of bondage and mind is the cause of liberation. And then it explains. Bandhaya vishaya sango muktyai nirvishayam mana. Mind absorbed in the sense objects is the cause of bondage, but mind detached from the sense objects is the cause of liberation. It is about attachment and detachment. When our mind is attached to victory, defeat, loss, gain, happiness, distress, heat, cold, it is the attachment that is the issue. When there is that attachment, there is ultimate, inevitable defeat because such things are temporary. When there is detachment, there is love, bhakti, a relationship, a bond with the eternal, Parabrahman, Krishna. That love is the impetus, that love is the motivation, that loving relationship with the Supreme is all that is required. And because Parabrahman, Bhagavan, is eternal, because all of our acts, our concepts, our consciousness, everything about who we are, what we do, is connected to, firmly connected with the Supreme, victory is guaranteed, ultimate victory, because we are connected with the eternal. It is the fish in water, the spark in fire. But Arjuna's battle here, he is developing an attachment, so the first thing he sees are his enemies out there. In our life, our number one enemy is our own mind. We have the power to bring the mind on our side. It can be our worst enemy or our best friend. Depending on whether or not we live with attachments or we live in bhakti, love. Hari Hari.